Welcome to the next episode of Data and AI with Rahul. We have two very interesting guests today with us. I want to introduce, first of all, Babu Ramalingam. Babu is Executive Vice President of Corporate Marketing and Communications at Regions Bank. With over 20 years of experience in banking, analytics, and marketing domain, Babu has held various senior leadership positions at organizations such as Capital One, M&T Bank, and US Bank. And he has been instrumental in advancing marketing analytics and customer insights through all those organizations. He's a very strong advocate for data-driven decision-making, and Babu brings a unique blend of strategic vision and analytical expertise. Thank you, Babu, for joining the show and really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rahul. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. And I'm delighted to welcome Tim Dayton to the podcast today. Tim serves as Executive Vice President and Head of Brand Strategy and Content Production at Regions Bank. A seasoned communication leader, he brings over 2 decades of experience, and he works at the intersection of brand, reputation, and storytelling, a very interesting and disruptive space as of now. His background includes senior roles at BBVA Compass and Makowski and Company before he joined Regions Bank, where he's led transformative initiatives in corporate communications. So thank you both. Thank you, Tim, for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting us, Rahul.
Absolutely. So the objective for today is to essentially go through 3 phases of evolution: the past, the present, and the future. And we will start by talking about the past and sort of learning from both of you how the industry has evolved, especially as it relates to banking, marketing, and communication. So first, I will come to you, Tim. Can you share your journey in banking and how marketing has evolved during that time, and especially with the rise of AI and personalization?
So my path to banking and finance wasn't a direct one right out of college. But out of college, I think back to the era that I, came of age professionally. And that was really it was the height of the power of mass media. And it was really a world where brands were built, equity was built with the few talking to the many. You had a set amount of channels that you could use, and they had profound influence. So much of our efforts were focused around, a typical ad campaign in that era was television and whatever else. I actually began my early career working in political communications, where it was one of the few areas that was data driven. But that wasn't common practice in business. That was very nascent, and it was a very relatively small scale. So as I moved into first financial services and eventually banking, we were making a lot of decisions based on pretty rudimentary data and making big bets in big investments in media and brand, often without a real clear insight in terms of our segments or the effectiveness of what we were doing. Fast forward today, and we're in a completely different world where we've left the unichannel to an asymmetrical market where pathways are not defined linearly. They're defined by variables that often some we can predict, some we can't, some we have to become much better at predicting. We're inundated with data, but we strive to turn that into actual intelligence. We're in a much different world than we were back then. But we're also in a world where we have, I would say, there's a term from a Harvard professor, we have a paradox of choice. In that before we had very limited sets of options, now we have almost an infinite set of options. And that is one of the conundrums we face is, well, what choices can we make that we feel comfortable with based on the data we have at hand?
Very interesting. And I loved your analogy on the political side, which essentially in the past, I think they were exhausting personalization. And now we are transforming into a paradox of choice, which is a very different conundrum. But it makes a hell lot of sense because banking and some of the other industries evolve at different paces. Babu, I'll bring you in. I'm sure you have a lot of interesting thoughts to share.
Just like what Tim shared, I mean, I did not grow up thinking I wanted to be a banker or I would be a banker, even though my dad was a banker. So I'm an engineer, and then got into math, and math was exciting, and kind of entered the industry at a time where analytics was still a luxury for most institutions, banks. Some did it really well. Some thought, okay, everybody has an analytics team and department, so we also need to have one. So that's how it kind of started. But I've been fortunate enough, I mean, really to work for some great organizations, be part of some really wonderful teams, solving some real customer problems and providing solutions through personalization, through marketing, all of those wonderful things. I mean, I'm going to reiterate some of the things that Tim already mentioned. I mean, marketing, when we look at it, I mean, it used to be more single channel, longer lead times, more broad-based mass and TV advertising. And we've come a long way where not just we have added channels, but we have also created more interactions between the channels. So analytics, again, plays a huge role in terms of trying to understand the interactions, trying to understand and actually not just understand and measure, but also enable a more seamless way we communicate to customers and prospects across different touch points and channels. I think Tim touched on it. I mean, I think we have gone out of the times when marketers, and I guess still we say we need more data. We will always say that, but I mean, we're sitting on like a lot more data than we could act on these days, right? So organizations have been collecting data behaviors over time. And now the challenge is, and more around how do we get insights at scale and how do we go from insights to decision making.
Very, very important points you made, Babu. And look, I mean, I think I want us to highlight like a couple of things that you talked about, right? Which is structure your analysis. The point that stood out to me that is very interesting is there is enough data out there now. Now it's not about, hey, can I add 1 more terabyte of data? It's about how do you create insights, and not just insights, decisions at scale. So, and there seems to have been a shift, right? From maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, the things have shifted, and things have shifted maybe not, in small increments, but there has been inflection points. So to you, do you see any inflection points that are meaningful, that have really changed the dynamic of what is going on today in the industry versus what was going on in the past?
I see it a little bit of both ways. So, I mean, I'm sure there have been meaningful inflection points, like data storage is cheaper than it used to be. The processing powers are better than what they used to be, and all of those things. I mean, you can call out COVID changed and the pandemic changed consumer behavior and all of those things. There are inflection points. But I'm a believer that a lot of these things are continuous, right? So this actually, consumer behaviors, expectations are shaped by many things that they're interacting with, and this is where a lot of those behaviors often are formed based on their interaction with many brands, not just with banks. A lot of what they're expecting today in terms of a bank understanding what their needs are and providing them the right solutions is driven by what they see in their Amazon cart. I mean, there are a lot of interesting stats out there in terms of how much Amazon sells originally, and then how much of Amazon sales is driven by things that they add after they get to the cart because of like really personalized and recommendations, right? So a lot of that goes towards understanding the customer behavior and understanding it in a contextual way so that you could be more relevant and provide the right solutions. And it's not about, I think that's another thing that has evolved in the ways even banks think about this. It starts from the customer, and understand what their needs are and design your strategy and offerings around that, right? So it's yes, banks do care about like the checking accounts and savings accounts and credit cards and all of those things, and they are very important. But the way banks are approaching, and I think a lot of this is enabled by data and analytics, and then the whole ecosystem that allows us to make these decisions using that data, starting with the customer.
Point on that. I think there was the trends that I saw in financial services and banking in particular, up until maybe 5 years ago, where we really found religion around this. We were about efficiency, right? We were about, we were discouraging, we wanted less branches. We wanted, the efficiency in the operating model was paramount. And, I think we've all come to realize, I think we always believed it, but more and more have realized, no, actually, it's about solving the human need. And it's that a bank is not in terms of where you have real long-term value with a customer, is not in just solving a transaction. That's table stakes. But if you can create that emotional connection and you can show up when expected, but also show up in places that are unexpected, that's your opportunity to actually build lasting brand value. And that's what these new emerging technologies really enable us to do.
So the two important themes here, right, to summarize. One is it has been a constant evolution of technology and data sort of keeping pace with the demands, but also the customer experiences have evolved, and customers are also becoming sort of more predictable in some ways, because an Amazon experience has become a benchmark, but we all know what an Amazon experience is because we are all customers of Amazon. The crest is, now that we have all these things, what do we do with it, and how do we leverage to drive the efficiencies, the thoughts that we had in the past? Let's go to a question that I think is very critical. We have data, but how do we use this data to drive personalization?
I think if you take a step back and look at it, right? So data has always been used kind of to answer a few basic questions or fundamental questions around the who, what, how, and when. When we look at those things, data is being used to determine who are the right audiences. How do we identify them? Either it is demographic data, is it about behavioral data, is it about what's the need state that Tim was talking about, right? What is the need? How do we identify it? And then matching that to contextually, when do we need to reach out? When is it going to resonate? What are some of those sequence of communications that we need to have with the consumer? So that's where data gets used, and it gets more and more sophisticated because we have more data, more signals, so more way to reach out to a customer in those meaningful moments for them. So that's where, to me, data, the evolution of technology and personalization and the tools is enabling us to be more relevant with those things.
I think layering into that is, not just the quantifiable data, but the qualitative data, in terms of understanding that. The example I always use is if you're using strictly quantitative data, my twin brother and I would be offered the same products at the same time in the same place, because we're born at the same time, we have about the same net worth, we're identical, but no two people think differently about money than the two of us. And so being able to layer that quantitative with qualitative that is meaningful is actually, again, with these new technologies, something that we've never really been able to do, not at scale, and not at the pace that that our culture demands. And so that's, to me, like the really, really interesting, exciting part of all of this. It's not just mapping out more compelling journeys, but it's actually informing what your message is with much more high quality information that's aggregated at scale that we've never been able to do before.
Well said, Tim. I was just going to add to it, which is, I think it's driving what we do, but it's also helping us learn much faster. much faster, right? So, I mean, we don't have gone on the days where, and we still do it in specific cases where we do an experiment and we have to wait for 6 months to see which one worked better. It still makes sense to do some of those experiments, but there are a lot more experiments that are done more around quick turnaround. What are some of those intra metrics that's giving us that we're doing it and we're going in the right direction, we're being more relevant, and use that to gain informed decisions. That's another place. I think that's actually a area where maybe gets sold short in the whole data and AI space, which is it enables testing at scale and learning at scale and be able to make those decisions faster.
I'm going to bring out 3 relevant points that I really thought were very interesting to just highlight it. The first point is meaningful moments that Babu, you highlighted. And, that's so important, right? To know when those meaningful moments in a customer's life cycle that aligns with what Tim, you were saying about qualitativeness, right? So you and your twin brothers, meaningful moments are going to be very different because of who you are, what you are, and how you approach life, right? But understanding those at the right time is very interesting. You mentioned very interesting thing. There was second, which was intra metrics. Instead of waiting for the full result to come out and for us to understand, hey, this is working, this is not working. Now decision making needs to happen faster, and you need to have we need to realize that intra metrics within testing is critical. But I think the last point is where I'm going to push both of you a little bit. We talked about testing and testing at scale. What is scale and what does it really mean?
It's not a number, right? It's scale is not like, oh, we need to be able to do 100 experiments this quarter. That's not how I think about it. It's more around, and this is where the connectivity to intermetrics comes in. Like we do something, we have a hypothesis, or we see a signal that tells us that we need to act certain way, or we need to provide a solution. We provide it, and what are some of those early indicators that tells us that we are on the right path? And then we can expand it, make that experience better. That can come later. But if we wait for the perfect solution and experiment it, there will only be so many experiments that we will do. So to me, I don't have a magical number in my mind that tells me that we are doing enough experiments, but having a thoughtful approach around here are the things that we want to learn, and what's the quickest path to see what is working, what is not working, and then pivoting your decisions based on what you have learned is what I mean by like testing and learning at scale and being able to act on those decisions quickly. And that's where to me, I see a huge difference over the years in terms of the availability of data, availability of signals is helping a lot.
Yeah, and as a practical matter, I mean, the ability to take something out of a test market or a test mode, which is limited, has no material impact on your earnings. And if you can take that across a group of markets that would have, a learning that would have meaningful impact in your earnings, well, you do that, and several times in a cycle, that can have significant impact in bottom line. And I think so. It's a difference between being in some sort of annual, semi-annual, biannual planning process versus implementing what you learn literally in real time, and also presenting those offers to a much broader scale of customers. That's pretty impactful, and for us, even on in brand and creative development, that's hugely important, right? Like we don't have to wait to we're not redoing our campaign for 2 years. No, we can actually act on that today, and because of the technologies that are available to us and the insight that we get and the confidence that we can take from that, we can make really significant changes that can show up in weeks as opposed to years.
Thanks for sharing the point of view, because scale can mean different things for different people. And I know that this is the debate, right? Like you both have been saying, reduce the time to experiment, have a meaningful impact and continuous impact. That's probably a good way to talk about scale. I'm going to shift a little bit into the term that's been taken, I think this year and maybe good part of last year from all of us, right? I mean, it's generative AI. So, in your mind, what are some of the use cases in banking? Do you see it helping in personalization at all, or do you see it's still got ways to go?
Well, I think Gen AI first of all, it's a very big box. there is small g Gen AI, which is really the building blocks that are helping you generate content more efficiently, with more variation, at greater velocity. Those are everywhere. They're ubiquitous. Literally every tool that a creator works with has some form of Gen AI powering it today. Then there is and that's always human intermediated. But listen, if you get 15-20% greater efficiency in your process, has a significant impact. Then you have Gen AI, true pure play big G Gen AI, which isn't human intermediated. It's that's a bridge that less of our in our industry have crossed, because there's obviously lots of unknowns around it in terms of how it plays out. The technology is still in its formative stages in a lot of cases. Some cases it advanced really well, and some have really taken it far. But I think absolutely around personalization, it gives you capacity and capability that we just never had before. I also think, and we talk a lot about this around our brand strategy, it's not just showing up in those moments better, but it's also in the unexpected places, the places where I wouldn't expect you to be, because that's where your competitors won't be. I really believe there's lots of potential in that respect. But I really think it comes down, Gen AI really comes down to where are you comfortable playing at this point.
I think you often hear some of those, like the usual ones, which is it helps you get efficient with coding, it helps you process document processing easier, it helps you generate content and chat bots. So you often hear those things, so I don't want to repeat all of those things, but at the same time, to me, where it's helping us kind of collect data and process data into insights quickly in large volumes, and it's helping us translate from data to insights faster. Getting to some of the why questions was just humans before. Now AI is giving us more options that actually fast forwards the process for humans. So it creates more options. It's allowing us to be more efficient at what we do, and it gives us more things to consider before we make up our mind on the why behind some questions.
So yeah, I mean, Gen AI is like you said, Tim. It's got a lot of the little g. I love the way you said it, the little g and the big G. We have some of the use cases that are ready, that are relevant, and some of them will be evolving more and more as we go along. I'm going to push you a little bit on the, especially as it relates to because it's meaningful from a personalization perspective, and the comparison between a banking experience and a retail experience. Still, there is a massive gap. Do you think that gap ever gets closed, or do you think my expectation from my home bank will never be like I need to be at an Amazon level? What's your perception?
Financial decisions are a lot more personal than retail experiences. So there might always be a gap in terms of like how the data gets used and how it drives some of the offerings, personalization, next best actions, and things like that. With that said, there is still a lot of room to strike the right balance between collecting the data, having the right privacy guards, at the same time using that to not be too creepy about it, and be relevant but not too creepy about it. So think that balance is always something that the industry will have to strike the right balance. Otherwise, it's going to create more distrust, and that's not helping anyone.
I think, to Babu's point, this is every firm's going to decide kind of where it plays and how it wants its experience to play. And there's only so much, in the current state of technology that for example, Gen AI can emulate personas and things like that, the nuances that are important if you're going to actually be authentic. That being said, the technology, even in the last 2-3 years, has progressed immensely. So, any firm that, any way that we would look at for a way that would augment, that it would enhance the experience, we would look at, within all the the guardrails that we have, which are significant for any institution. But there's no denying that we've got to constantly look at in the experience that we want to present, in the brand experience that we want to present, how can these things augment that? But ours is always going to be, in our case, a very human-centered experience. It's where we choose to compete. It's where we have our investments. It's where we believe we can win.
I think you're very right. I mean, each bank, each institution will have to make their own decisions, and the regulatory environment is definitely very different for retail versus banking. And do I want to be my bank to know what I did yesterday night? Maybe not, right? But the retailer will know because I spent money on something. But you brought up an interesting challenge, as maybe regulatory is one of the challenges or opportunities. But what other challenges are you facing as you are trying to drive personalization and some of the AI-driven personalization? What are some of the key challenges that marketers face today?
There are some obvious ones, which is, I think we already mentioned, regulatory concerns, data quality tends to be another one. But if I may take a pivot a little bit, I think where I would like for the organizations to go more is getting associates ready, right? So, I mean, this is a technology, when we look at the change cycles become shorter and shorter, and this really feels like it's one of those things after the web, the mobile. This feels like it's a material change, right? So rather than fight it, it's more around getting your associates ready to think about, how do we get most out of it? How do we use this to make our jobs easier, better, so that we can spend more of our time doing things that adds a different kind of value than what can be easily done. I think the other thing that I would add is I often run into some conversations where explicitly or implicitly folks think of AI is going to replace strategic thinking. To me, it doesn't, right? You still have to know what your North Stars are. What is the experience? And Tim touched on it earlier. What is the experience that you want to drive for your customers? I mean, AI is not going to tell you that. I mean, you need to think through, what are the objectives? What are the metrics? What does good and great looks like? And the AI can help you with some of the hows, but still the strategic thinking is very important in defining what does our brand look like, what kind of experience we want to deliver for our customers, and what does great look like for us.
I do not see AI replacing kind of the humanity and the human-centered experience, right? That informs what your strategy may be. And it's also, AI is not an all or nothing game. There's a lot of value to building greater productivity in your current way you work. And there's lots of great tools to do that. And any organization has to be looking at those things, giving that exposure so people can see that, well, it can actually augment the work I'm doing. And there's lots of great off-the-shelf solutions right now that can do that. I come to work every day in a big corporation. There's lots of things. Boy, some agents help. Some AI agents would really help with some things. Try to book a conference room somewhere. So those are like the quality of life things that these exist today. So it's not an all or nothing. And so where can we adopt in these little small ways to get people comfortable with and to understand its potential? Now, as we go down the path, always understanding that at the end of the day, a human's got to be involved in what that strategy is and what that expectation is, and have the judgment to say, I look at this from a storytelling perspective in terms of what, we talk a lot more now about funnel synergy, right? Like how we're showing up in these different channels in a way that feels similar so that they're not acting differently. And that gets exacerbated if you have unmitigated agents, creating content on your behalf. Like you have to look and feel and sound like you're the same entity, right? You're the same brand. And that's one that we have to get greater comfort with, because I don't know that the technology is exactly there. But it's, it's that you can definitely see it over the horizon.
I think you guys have brought up so many interesting points now. And while we talked about some of the challenges, I think we already started talking about the future and how the talent should be evolving. I want to go into the second section or the third section of our topics. What does the future look like? What do you see in the next 5 years? Can you even foresee 5 years down the line? How will a bank operate? What will the experience? How will the experience be different because of AI and personalization?
Well, here's the one thing that I think about a lot, and it's not even so much even just a bank. A bank, obviously, we're one of we're one industry where it will have profound impact, but it's all industries. So, for example, today when we create stories, we have creators, and those creators are designers, they're writers, they create the building blocks. Well, we're pretty rapidly moving to a world where a lot of those building blocks are actually already in existence. And so, but there's always been a path, right? Like you learn the basics, you learn those fundamentals, and then you apply them to become an editor and then to become, which is really a decision maker and an architect. And I really believe that there are going to be whole new jobs and job vocations that are in the creator world, where you're going to be not a writer per se, but you're going to be a content architect. Because you're understanding that those building blocks are going to be used in different ways. And so you have to collect those building blocks and think about them differently. It's still a very creative exercise. It requires that fundamental background, but you apply it in a very different way. But I will say that my biggest concern is that we can't lose, particularly in the storytelling world, those people that create those compelling narratives. That comes from a fundamental skill set that we can't lose. People still have to understand how a writer thinks, how a designer thinks. That has to still be fostered.
Well said, Tim. I can't agree with you more. I think some of the fundamentals same from a brand, the value of brand, trust with brand, all of those things are here to stay, right? So I think I sincerely hope in general, and it's not just banking, to Tim's point, like the industry of banking, but as well as other industries, do this in such a way where that trust stays. And I think that will be a differentiator between successful brands and the ones that don't, that don't succeed. I think, if I may, the other thing is, I try not to think about exactly what's going to happen in 5 years, but be prepared for whatever happens. How do we kind of respond, see it, notice it, and respond to it quickly? So as a thought process, it would help to, again, going back to preparing the workforce, getting the folks ready for change, spotting changes, spotting trends, and coming up with having contingency plans, coming up with some scenarios that we need to react. So things are going to happen. Not everybody's going to be able to predict all of those things, but the successful one is going to be the one who had a plan that they could execute quickly. So I know the question was more about AI and personalization, but in general, when I look ahead, I mean, I think I believe the successful ones are going to be ones who are training their workforce, getting ready to deal with changes, spot the changes, see the trends, and create an organization that can get to the decision making fast, because the trend might be gone before we make a decision sometimes, and that doesn't help anyone. So how do you create a culture where you can make decisions without creating a lot of risk, obviously, for the organization and for the trust that you have with your customers? So ability to spot trends, have options in terms of responses, and ability to make those decisions and respond would be a key quality.
I think neither one of you said banks will not exist, so that's good. Maybe they will or will not.
Well, we're banking on that one.
We're banking on that one.
And marketers will be all AI driven, because that's the worst case scenario.
If I can add to that, though, because there's a lot of discussion, particularly around brand, and brands were traditionally kind of built kind of in the mass media, and they were built in public sphere, right? Brands are now being built in very personal spheres, and that's where AI can actually, it's not the death of marketing; it's actually a rebirth of marketing, but it's in very personal spaces, and that's where data and AI tools can really, really help marketers.
I think I love what both of you are hinting at in terms of how to think about it, how to embrace the change and lead the change versus just being on the wayside and fight it, right? The change is coming. There are a lot of concerned parents out there and concerned students out there, especially the ones going into college or master's degrees. They have no idea whether what they're learning right now will be, of any use by the time they, and I'm one of those parents, by the way. In 4 years, who knows what's going to be important to any of the students right now, right? What advice would you give them? What other advice? Is there any skill development? Is there any advice for budding marketers, budding bankers who are out there really listening to the leaders here and looking for some direction?
To me, again, I'll start with some of the fundamentals will stay the same, right? So understand the power of data and know enough around how things work, how data comes together, how do people get to the right insights, have the right analytical process and thinking of starting with the question in mind before we go do the analysis. What does good look like, and all of those things. So those fundamentals are, I hope, stays and should stay. I believe they should stay, right? And some of these things are not new. I mean, the customer-centric thinking, the importance of personalization. I think that's where they're gonna stay. It's just the consumer expectations are gonna continue to evolve, and we have to keep up. We have to keep up with those things. If more and more data is going to get collected, like Tim said, I think at some point we might run out of space or computing power, or I don't know. I'm not smart enough to say exactly how we're going to all figure that out, but focusing on creating the balance between many things, right? So it's the balance of managing to customer expectations, but at the same time, doing all the things in a governed way, privacy appropriate way, managing your risk, balancing your risk with the lack of progress. If we take too much time, we're going to miss out on opportunities. If we act too fast, we're probably going to do some not so smart things. But what is the right balance that we need to strike? And those are some of the qualities that I would encourage folks to have. And last but definitely not least, it's about building relationships, building trust with your leadership, coworkers, partners, and all of those things. That has always been important.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think in terms of those that are merging into the workforce, depending on where they come from, having, fostering those fundamental humanities, understanding how humans think, how they are They are emotional creatures. Having some foundation, like I look for in our brand team, I look for people that come from a creative discipline, because you have exposure to design theory, you have exposure to linguistics, you have exposure to these things that are we have eons of human experience behind. And then all the data and technology, these are the new tools. And so think of, don't confuse the tools with the underlying competencies that are going to make you a great marketer.
I mean, much better said, Tim. I mean, and don't confuse the tools and technology with the foundational concepts. I mean, that's so well said. I think continuing to stay curious, ask the questions, ability to connect the business strategy to like what are we doing? What is the tool? The tool is the tool. We've had dashboards for decades.
I mean, I'll be honest, like if I was relying on the tools I was taught in college, I wouldn't have worked for the last 25 years. I mean, they've been antiquated. So, but the underlying principles to use them, those have been invaluable. Those are what you build on.
But I think you brought up so many important, interesting points, and I'll highlight a couple of them that are, in compare and contrast, missed out in today's world. The value of brain is still there, right? The value of trying to understand, comprehend, and be able to ask the questions, being inquisitive. But the value of human touch is just as important in the workforce. And in today's environment, especially in the Instagram generation of texting and writing stories, and that's our interaction model, this is the learning that actually maybe we should tell colleges to have more, in terms of having more and more human interaction versus just go to college and give exams, which is how I at least grew up and learned. But you both brought up so many interesting points that it's going to be difficult to summarize. A lot of interesting insights through the last 45-50 minutes. But I would like, I'll give you the opportunity to sort of at least say anything in closing that you think we have missed touching on.
It was good to reflect and think about some of the challenges and barriers that we face today, but more importantly, staying true to the fundamentals and staying excited and being very positive about what's to come. It's a great time to be in marketing. It's a great time to be in financial services. Looking at what consumer behaviors are and how they are evolving, and trying to stay on top of it to meet and exceed those expectations, while striking the balance of like what's important to the consumer with what's important to the bank. That's where marketing is fun. That's where marketing gets fun. That's where analytics makes marketing fun. So thanks again for the conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo Babu's statements. I mean, we're in the era of the great convergence, right? So we have more tools, but we have inputs from different directions that we've never been able to put together as well as we can now. And I look at it that way. I look at it, it's a great era of opportunity. Of course, we have to be responsible in how we approach them. There's no silver bullets, but I think it's a great time to be in this space and in this location.
This was exciting. I think you ended on a high note, which is great. Still encouraging everybody to be a marketer and be a banker is always great. And I agree with you. I've always been in that industry, and I feel like while the opportunities have increased, the banking industry still stays true to its roots, and I think we enjoy working with that industry.